Hello, I'm Dan Alford. Welcome to the Arc Specialties Weld of the Week.
Hello, this is Dave Hebble, and this week we want to continue our discussion on weld inspection. In our last episode, Jim covered liquid penetrant testing of our weld. This week we want to look at how to check the size of our fillet weld. To check the size of the fillet weld, we're going to use a fillet gauge. The fillet gauge has two sides on it, one for checking the leg size. The other side is used for checking the throat of the fillet. So let's take our fillet gauge for checking the leg size. We're going to put the gauge flat against one leg of the fillet and slide it over the fillet weld. We want the toe of the weld to just touch the edge of the gauge. We then rotate our gauge to the opposite leg, and again we'll slide it down over the fillet weld, and we want the toe to just touch the gauge. In this case, we're looking at a 3/16 fillet. As you're looking at the weld, you may see an area that looks like it's slightly undersized. So when we check that, okay, the toe of the weld did not touch the gauge. So to see how much smaller it is, we can go one step smaller. The gauges come in 1/16 increments, so we can go down one size and see if the weld will touch with a 1/16 smaller gauge. If both legs of the fillet are adequate, the next thing we want to check is the throat size. Where we can get into trouble is if we have a concave weld. We may have adequate leg, but the throat will be shallow because it's concave. Next, let's check a convex weld. And now when we slide our fillet gauge up to the weld, you'll notice that it touches the throat gauge before we've touched the other side of the fillet. Here we see a nice flat fillet, good throat size, equal leg size, and this is what we're aiming for. In an earlier episode, we mentioned that in many cases, beauty is only skin deep. So now that we've inspected the outside of the weld with dye pen and we've checked the size of the fillet, let's look at what it really looks like inside. To do that, we're going to put our sample on the bandsaw, cut it, and we'll take it into the lab. We'll polish it and etch it and take a look inside. To etch our aluminum weld, we don't need any fancy chemicals. One thing that everybody can pick up is oven cleaner. And you want the full strength stuff, you know, the kind that makes your nose burn. So you get some full strength, easy off oven cleaner, and you can spray on the weld. Oven cleaner has sodium hydroxide in it. It reacts with the aluminum, and it will help bring out the weld. Here you see a video of it bubbling away. So let it work for a few seconds and we'll wash it off and look at the weld. So after we've etched our sample, we're going to put it under the microscope to take a closer look. And that can be very revealing. All of a sudden we may see some little pinholes of porosity in our weld, but we want to focus on the penetration into the root of the joint. And it's easy to make a good-looking fillet on the outside, but we may not have penetration all the way to the root. And so we'll look at a couple of samples. The first one here we'll put up. If we draw a straight line down the face of the fillet through the root, we want to make sure that the weld penetrated all the way. And in this case, you can see we do not have adequate penetration into the root. Another thing that can be revealing is look at the penetration into the sides, the legs of the fillet. In this weld, you can see it's straight line. You can put a line right on the down the edge of the plate. There's no penetration into the plate. Did it really fuse? I don't know. We could bend it and find out, but it looks highly susceptible. Next, we want to look at a good fillet. And in this example, you can see that we've penetrated all the way through the root of the joint, and we have excellent penetration into both legs of the fillet. And if we take a closer look at this weld, you'll notice that there's no porosity. It's a nice sound weld, good penetration in the root and into both legs, and this is what we're looking for. Thanks for joining us this week. In our next session, we are going to talk about more destructive testing. We're going to do the fillet break test and look inside the weld, and then we're going to do face and root bend test. Join us for our next episode of Weld of the Week.
We look forward to posting new episodes of the Arc Specialties Weld of the Week. If you're one of the thousands of operators of Arc Specialties equipment around the world and you have a weld that you would like to showcase, please contact us. At Arc Specialties, we thrive on problems. Send us yours.